Who's there? Welcome to Valley Stories. I'm going to start out today with talking about the farm that I grew up on and our outhouse and some of the things I remember about it. I've told you before, the house of my youth was an old house, and it had all of these sheds out there, and then when you got out far enough, it had, at least what seemed to me then, a huge barn out here on the end of the shed. Now inside the shed, there, over in the corner, that kind of, it actually jutted out from the sheds and it jutted out from the barn, so that, well, it sort of hung out on the back. In fact, from the back, let me see if I can draw this. The sheds were like this, the barn was like this, and the ground went like this. And this outhouse, it protruded from the barn, and it protruded from the shed, and it just sort of sat out there sort of on its own. And of course the ground sloped down, so it was really very tall, you know, from up here on, you know, the floor would have been maybe this level, and it was very tall from here up to here. Now, inside the outhouse, when you walked in the door on the left, I'm going to draw the diagram, and it looked like this. And this was a wall here, and this was a wall here, and this is where the seats were, and there was a hole over here which we thought of as the father hole, sort of like in the Three Bears. And of course they would have had to have been at least partially bare here in the outhouse, but let's not concentrate on that. The mother, and then down here this short one was the baby. Now on the center seat, my mother had constructed a seat with a cushion on it. She wrapped it with cloth and, you know, left a hole in the center, of course. I mean, that was the critical part. And I'm hoping this is not too graphic for you. Now, I had two other children that I played with a lot when I was a child. And when we went in, I was the one that was relegated to the father seat, and when I was very small, I really felt like I was going to fall through, but I don't think that maybe I could have. And the boy that was younger than me, he was able to take the child's seat. And of course he was happy he was on the child's seat. And then the girl that was usually with us, of course, she got the cushioned center seat. And actually I should draw that the cushion was on there, you know, for her. And of course, got to make sure that we know that this is a girl. Of course, that doesn't mean a lot now. Back then, though, It was mostly the girls and women that had long hair like that. Now, I am going to do something here. So now I'm going to have to do something here in this area. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have to mark this area out as being censored, because that's not something that I want anybody, you and anybody else, to be able to see, because, well, you can understand why. And I'll just finish, of course. This was the younger boy. That's not his legs, because they've been censored. This was the girl, and that's not her legs, that's her arms, because that's been censored. And this was me, very unhappy, because I've been censored too. And another part that we're not going to look at, but whoops, wrong way. Can I turn this? There. Down below here, of course, this went into what we called the barn cellar, because it was below the barn. And just so you'll know, this is the floor here. And it would collect down there in the barn floor, and they're actually at the bottom of the outhouse part. There was a chute that guided it down, and again, I don't want to be indelicate, but my forefather would have to clean that out. And that's enough. That is enough of that, I think. Now, inside the outhouse, we'll just look at a couple of walls here. And the perspective is going to be off, but just imagine, these walls. In one wall, there was a very high window. And like I've told you, this was, because the ground sloped down, this was very high. I'm not sure. The window actually could have been down probably at floor level here, except it wasn't, because a person would have to be able to see in even a window at floor level. They'd probably have to be at least 15 feet tall down there. So I don't know, but I guess they did it. Probably people felt they needed their privacy. But anyway, in the summertime, my father would actually take this window out. And I would frequently stand at the window, especially when I was too young to even barely see out of it, because breezes would waft in, and of course the outhouse, well, it smelled like an outhouse. So that was really handy. And then as I got older, I liked to stand at the window and look out across the fields, because I always enjoyed doing that, and see the fresh air. And of course, in the morning there'd be the dew on the fields, and everything would smell fresh. The other thing about the outhouse was that my father, well, and I think people before him, just lined the walls with calendar. In fact, he was I guess what you might call a calendar junkie. He had one whole wall in the kitchen that he felt his duty in December of every year was to go around and get all the calendars he could, and then he'd put them up, and then the first of every month he would change them. So it was kind of fun to look at these calendars, and of course some of them were quite old. Now there was one calendar that I particularly liked, and it was from the Dew Drop, I'm sure you know what's coming, in. And I just thought that was a wonderful name. There was another calendar I remember that was in there that had the signs of the zodiac, and I think it even explained what they were. And it was later in life that I got to realize what a bunch of foolishness that was. And actually not really too much later in life, because I would look at my zodiac sign, and it wasn't a fish, but it was something. And it would say, well, today you'd read something and your fish is supposed to do something. I guess it's supposed to swim upstream and supposed to swim downstream. And if it swims upstream, you're having good luck. And if it swims downstream, you're having bad luck. Well, that I could see was never true. So I discounted that at a pretty young age. Just the other thing I want to point out is that an outhouse traditionally looks like that, but of course ours didn't. In fact, it didn't even have a heart or a crescent in the door. Because, I mean, it just had a door that was on the side of the shed there where you went in. But I always assumed that the reason it was called an outhouse is because it was out, and somewhat away from the house. Anyway, the reason that I think that they called these outhouses was they were away from the house, and sometimes a long ways. You didn't want them too close. But anyway, we still called ours an outhouse, just because that was a typical thing of calling it. Some people actually called it a back house, and I think that's maybe because frequently, especially if it were in the city, it would be at the back of the house. So that's the story of the outhouse. I really appreciate your watching. You can like, comment, and subscribe below, and I hope you have a blessed day. Bye-bye.